Inflationary pressure in the United States squeeze remittances. Transfers are dropping by 1.1 billion in quarter to March. Cash sent home from Kenyans living abroad in 3 months to March of this year, for the first time since 2010, has fallen and has hit a multi-decade high. As inflation has hit a multi-decade high in many countries, squeezing household budgets. Low-income minorities in these nations, including a significant share of whom are Kenyans, are now having to squeeze and select some of the most important things where they want to spend their money on, and some of these essential ones are food, transportation, and housing. I want to inform you that Kenyans abroad typically send money to help their families and to invest in projects like real estate, and with flow from the US accounts for about 60% of those total remittances that we receive from nations abroad. So if you have a relative in Minnesota, right now if you text them, they'll tell you Minnesota because they don't have enough money to be sending through. What is happening in these economic centers? We're driving that conversation there in a bit. The Daily Nation, Ruto's new salary plan for workers. President William Ruto pictured here yesterday with his deputy Rigathi Gachagua, and there next is KUTV Secretary General in frame Francis Atwoli and other leaders who were there at Uhuru Gardens yesterday. Very low turnout, which was registered there in Uhuru Gardens and also across the country. We're getting into that as President William Ruto also announced new salary policies that will set equal pay for workers in public and private sectors. This is a policy before cabinet, and it is being promised taken to parliament, and as they always say in the Kenya Kwanza government, soon. So how soon that is, the defending of this workers' rights, we are waiting to see. But that's what's there on the Daily Nation. The Standard, workers go home empty-handed amid protest talks. Employees are expecting the government to focus on high cost of living and probably get a pay rise, but the president was silent yesterday in matters how they're going to tackle that minimum wage, which according to them, it is a delay because of setting up of that wages commission, which is required to advise the state on matters of wages and also setting up of the minimum wage. I have with me Kimani Wachira. He was here last week. Welcome back.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
We are great to be here.
I think this time we've come with a pin. I didn't see that pin last week, yeah?
That's a Kenyan pin and Vision 2030.
Vision 2030 in Kenya.
Yes, but I'm told that it's no longer Vision 2030, it's Vision 3020. But probably the viewers will tell us why they are saying.
We are shifting the goalpost.
We are shifting the goalpost.
We've gotten too near to the 2030 deadline that I think it's Nilemna Patio extension. We've pushed it now to.
It's just a Kenyan way. We are African, and we always say African time is different from the rest of the time. Probably that's why we have to shift from 3020 to from 2030 to 3020. But ideally, is most of the things that were supposed to be done have not yet been done.
Right.
So as I wear these, I'm also ashamed as a statesman that the visions that our forefathers had and our fathers have not yet been achieved, starting from independence, where we are talking about fighting illiteracy, ignorance and poverty, and those are the same challenges we are fighting today, 58 years after independence.
Right, 58 years after independence, the papers are all about the plight of workers. And if you thought, like, if you died in 1963 during that speech by the first president tackling ignorance, poverty, and illiteracy, and you woke up today, you will think the headlines will be so bright, and it will be a colorful nation where workers' rights have been taken a look at. The high cost of living is no longer a problem, and we are all going to school and we are all literate. But that's not the case. High levels of illiteracy. If we start from culticism and whatnot, high levels of poverty, the high cost of living here, and workers are not being taken a look at, the unrest that are expected today. And the other one was big
health.
Health as well. That's also a challenge. And I see here that the president is defending the extra pension and medical deduction, which are shrinking the workers' pay slips, and this is still not having raised their minimum wage. We're getting into that. But what's the best headline? Let's start with the headlines and then we can get into the stories.
I think the Standard is overworking. workers go home empty-handed amid protests. But I'll also go again with the photo that the Daily Nation captured today.
Okay.
That has everybody on board. But the headline that really caught my eye is the Standard.
All right.
Because that everybody was expecting that the new regime, the bottom-up regime yesterday, would have risen the salary of the Kenyan employee, the minimum wage, from a bottom to a bit higher to address issues to do with high cost of living. We understand that they're in the process of lowering the cost, but before that, they need to caution the Kenyan employee who was celebrating his day yesterday. Yesterday, it's an international celebration that is commemorated worldwide, and I expected that despite the low turnout, Ruto will, or the government will increase at least even a 1% rise for the basic minimum wage.
I remember that President Uhuru Kenyatta did actually do a rise of 12% in his last Labor Day celebrations. And we were expecting at least a bit of this to happen from President William Ruto. I don't know, do you have pointers on why you think this is, that the president still is... NSSF is now above 1,000. Previously, it was 200 shillings. NHIF is now mandatory, and there's also talks of increasing of that the remittances to NHIF. And this is even having no hopes of a pay rise for the common employer. Are there things that maybe you can the president can point to and say they are informing his decision not to increase the wage?
I think when the Kenyan went to vote for this presidency, they had two options: the bottom-up economic model and the trickle-down economic model. They settled with the bottom-up economic model, and we expected that things will be done bottom-up. Yesterday, or since the government has gone there or was elected, we have seen when it comes to salary, it is trickle-down. Instead of raising up the salary, the government is now getting to eat the salary. Since they got in office, without clear indications or plans, the pension scheme was re-engineered, maybe for the goodwill of the employee, but we really don't think it's for the goodwill. Secondly, they introduced new taxes, and I quote, levies about housing levy, NHIF, and we're all told this is for the greater good. But the question is there greater good if this person cannot sustain a basic meal? Right.
The president said that he will adopt a new remuneration policy that will be responsive to the cost of living. And I just want to read a quote from him. He is saying here of this new policy, which is there in cabinet and will be presented to parliament. We will expedite the adoption in order to reconfigure the national wage determination framework and ensure that it is responsive to sustainability, productivity, and the cost of living in prescribing the national minimum wage. So according to KUTV and President William Ruto, the challenges that are facing the common Kenyan worker are also facing the common worker all across the globe. Should we bite them benefit of doubt? That this is a problem that is global.
Even though in Kwaregi they say that no matter how good a hen will dance or a chicken will dance, it will never impress the hawk. Kenyans will never be impressed by what the government does because they are focusing so much on the long term and forgetting that we are so much focused.
You really have a problem with the long term, yeah? You hope that short-term problems could be solved as well.
Yes, because we cannot be hopeful of a greater tomorrow, but we are not enjoying our today. Kenyans have rebirthed, they have told, 58 years after independence, we are still having someone breathing below the minimum poverty line of $1 a day, and then the interventions that are done are not tailor-made for the person at the bottom of the economy. So I did have a problem with that, and I expected yesterday that being a Labor Day celebration, it's not going to be political, and that is what most
turned out
Kenyans thought. And but I'm also asking myself, why did they not go? Because they knew it was going to be political.
Right. The Standard
Nothing
is,
about
the Standard is giving that number. I think I saw those numbers
yes,
somewhere here.
on the Daily Nation, I think on page 5
All right.
and page 6.
Okay. Right, Kenyans snub Labor Day celebrations. Here, we're being given figures of the number of Kenyans who, for example, the 40,000 capacity venue only held about 2,000 people, half of whom sat in the open field to get the weakest sun rays on their skins as the day wore on. 40,000 capacity venue, 2,000 people showing up. Should we blame KUTV? Should we blame the government for the lack of enthusiasm for celebrating this being an international day of celebrating workers? Workers are not even enthusiastic about showing up to listen because, as you've said, there may be partly because they expect it to be more political, and that's what it turned out to be, less of their issues. Should we blame KUTV because it's organized by the KUTV Secretary General, who should have had the workers' concerns at center stage?
Indeed, we can blame KUTV because KUTV has transformed from an association that is supposed to fight for the rights of the Kenyan worker to a political outfit. In the previous election, it was in Azimio. Immediately, the government was declared to be Kenya Kwanza. It Kwanzad in declaring its support for the government. And yesterday, the discussion was about we say this. We have not that time. We have changed the posts. We are saying this instead of advocating for the Kenyan worker who is suffering. I think yesterday I only saw Sakaja, who was outstanding, defending and talking about the Kenyan worker. He talked about the security guards. He talked about the taxi drivers. He talked about other people who are race remunerated and advocating for them. So if I was asked, the Nairobi people would also extend, and they can give Sakaja to KUTV to just do some work there because he's doing more than KUTV boss. Because KUTV
who's supposed to be fighting for the workers'
who is,
rights.
I understand he is also the African leader of trade unionists. He's taking the role of Tom Mboya. But if today Tom Mboya rose, he'll be ashamed in what KUTV has been able to achieve because it's more of a political outfit. Maybe to ask to digest that, in his speech, he only, the last bit is where he mentioned about requesting the president to increase the wages of the Kenyan people. Speaker after speaker changed the day from a Labor Day to a political day. I thought it was a Raila Day yesterday.
And notably, of course, Raila Odinga missed these celebrations. I think he was there in the last ones with President Uhuru Kenyatta. But just to still speak on the promises, some of those promises that were given out yesterday, President William Ruto spoke of policy shift and some of the bilateral agreements which have been there between President William Ruto and other countries. They're saying that they are signing at least 10 bilateral agreements in the coming months. The funny thing about this is that they're saying there are work opportunities in Canada, in the US, in the UAE, in Germany for the Kenyan worker. But when you look at the remittances, which are being portrayed here from the Business Daily, they're saying money from Kenyans abroad is dipping for the first time in 13 years. But we're seeing here that we are promised there are jobs, abroad from an average of 400 weekly up to 5,000 jobs, a growing number of Kenyans who are leaving the country for these jobs abroad. Should we be encouraging Kenyans to get out of the situation which is dire, to go for greener pastures, to increase remittances, or should we be working to ensure that while you're in Kenya, you're being paid a wage that is accepted globally?
One, we must understand that Kenya is a hugely populated nation. It's a densely populated nation. And the government has invested so much in its human resource. We have free primary education. We have free secondary education. And even in campus, we have subsidized campuses. That is where the KUSIPs get in. And all these investments needs to have a return. And the government's sole responsibility should be, if we invest, we need a return. That's why the Kenya Kwanza government is advocating for Kenyans to go outside there. But my question is, when we take them, we send them, are they coming back? What is the working condition to where we have sent them? We have seen stories of, especially in the Saudi Arabia, UAE, where our Kenyan workers are mistreated. Before we sign any agreement with any foreign nation, we ought to, one, revisit our labor laws such that when we are sending our workforce, they are protected by our strong labor laws back at home, such that the ambassadors and our foreign consulates there are able to engage the government in terms of protection of our Kenyan citizens. Going back to the economic aspect, we are sending our Kenyans to nations that are already suffering. Why don't we encourage those investors to come invest in our semi-arid areas, in our special economical blocks or regions,
and use these workers right here within the
and use these workers here so that we export and strengthen our Kenyan shillings.
Is this something to be proud of when we say the largest remittances are from Kenyans we have exported abroad, and these are people with skill that could be useful here? Is this something to be proud of, Washira, when you look at it? Because if I imagine the situation a country like China is in, what we have seen over the years in terms of policy for education and workforce is that they take their workers outside to learn skills, and then they come back right? They come back and develop their own republic. Is this something that we should be proud of, that most of our remittances, 60% of it is from the US?
I think, or basically, we should not be proud of anything. We should not be proud of sending people and giving us little investment, whereas if they were in this nation doing the same investment or doing the same work, we would have developed our economy, created more opportunities, and developed the nation. You find that we have engineers doing mega projects as expatriates in various nations. We have people in each and every 24 sector of the economy, as they say in the Kenyan National Chambers of Commerce and Industries, doing marvelous work outside, developing others. When they are paid, before they send anything, they have to consume. So they have to pay taxes in that nation. They have to do things. They even pay rent in those nations.
Right.
Some even have bought cars. And all those investments, all those revenue
could have been happening here.
Yeah.
Right.
Goes back to the nation that they are employed.
Right. I would love to know, of course, who is delaying the appointment of the Wages Council, which is supposed to advise the state on matters of minimum wage. But you can read this on page 4 of the Business Daily, and a review of the increasing of the basic minimum wage didn't happen yesterday, but President Uhuru Kenyatta, as I said, last year did increase the minimum wage by 12%, ending a freeze that had lasted 3 years. This time, the government of Kenya Kwanza has snapped it, still putting the minimum wage at 13,572. I'd love to know if you're paid the minimum wage per month, because that's what the government is providing as figures so far. 13,000. If you're paid below 13,000 a month, just know you're paid below the minimum wage. Na unafaa kujoin Raila Odinga leo in the streets as he leads his charge against the cost of living. Talking about that, today, yesterday, as you said, it was politics, and they couldn't avoid, as much as they wanted to, they couldn't avoid Raila Odinga. And here the Daily Nation is putting it a squeeze at the far right, and I think that's the last one I want us to have a look at. President Ruto and Azimio Chief Raila Odinga have maintained hardline positions. They have maintained hardline positions over today's planned protests, and even the calls for restraint, which were there yesterday's Labor Day. Raila Odinga is expected to hit the streets today. First, what are your expectations? And shouldn't he have done this yesterday? Yesterday being Labor Day.
I think he said that the Kenyan people need to rest, being a holiday, and extended his holiday. Because I think we have had a lot of holidays so far, and he has made sure that today is another holiday, which is, to some, they will call it economical sabotage. To others, they will call it fighting for their rights. But at the end of the day, we must agree that these planned demonstrations should not be the way. The government was elected to give an ear to Wanjiku. May they be in opposition or in the government. We don't need to have a standstill and economical, where our economy is held hostages by the opposition. We need to have the government and the opposition working together and not together. When I say this, I'm saying that they need to get a sit down and address some of the challenges that we need to address.
They tried. I hear it's failed.
But that was, that I would say both were not willing to. They were not honest with each other. We need to have a honest conversation. Because at the end of the day, our economy is not headed to the right direction.
That's true.
I saw that in the last page of the Standard or Daily Nation, we are talking about taking a 408 billion loan from African Bank to cushion the Kenyan economy. Even if the money is brought and there is no impact because businesses are not going on, there will be no return. So the government needs to listen to what the opposition are requesting and reach at a compromise. The opposition also needs to compromise,
right, so
that we can move forward as a nation.
Okay.
They say that if you go to the market with a monkey, people will be agitated. People will watch the monkey, but they will go home with the sheep and not the monkey.
All right, that's a very good way to end that part. Washira, it's 9:53 in the morning. Surprisingly, whenever we are here on set to discuss the developments on the dailies, time seems to fly by. But I think those are the most important conversations happening this morning. Ruto's new salary plan for workers, which is yet to see light in Parliament. The rivals between the opposition and the government of the day. Protests which are expected today. You can be following up on that on the rest of the broadcasts at KUTV. Maybe you can mention one more thing before you read us the quote at the back of the Business Daily. Again today, tutafunga pamoja. So this is going to be your quote, and then I'm going to do my quote, and then we wrap up the show. But anything to say about maybe culticism? Is the Baba movement a cult?
I think generally politics is sycophancy, and sycophancy is cultism. So both political leaders are head of cats, and I will say that without fear of contradiction, and also knowing that I'll be joining the political hemisphere soon, I'll not be a cat reader.
All right.
As I conclude, I would like to give a big shout out to a guy who is tweeting called Edwin Muguro, who also serves as my PA, and he told me if I fail to recognize him and give him a minute,
atafanya PR disaster.
He'll do it the way he did it in Shakahora.
Shout out to Edwin then for keeping you going,
and also to everyone who has been watching and also engaging us in our social media handles. That is in the KU underscore TV, and also at my Kimani Washira. And as I conclude, I'll quote Raphael Waldo, who said that the only person who are destined to become is the person you decide to be. The only person you are destined to become is the person you decide to be.
The only person you're destined to become is the person you decide to be.
Yes.
Right.
I'm Kimani Washira. I've been here to discuss, dissect, and have an elaborate discussion about the political hemisphere, the magazines, and today's dailies. And it's been a pressure.
All right, thank you very much, Kimani Washira, the TVET Association of Students President. Always a pleasure having him here. Just an update before I wrap up. Anti-riot police officers are fighting off demonstrators in Ngong Road, who blocked this morning. Nairobi CBD businesses are already closed. The demonstrators are reported to already be around Imara Daima estate of Mombasa Road. The protests are leading to serious traffic snarl-up around the GM stage. So more is happening. Nairobi CBD Maandamano Tuesday. Police and also the people from the side of Azimio and all those who feel they are grieved as well. We couldn't go through much of what is happening, but you can grab yourself a copy and then utatuambia during the week what you thought about the developments of the day. And for the conversations that we've had here since morning on business and also the rest of the guests that are here, you will find them on YouTube, KUTV Kenya. If you type Biashara Tuesday, you definitely see it. And on social media,